Gertrude Baniszewski, nicknamed the Torture Mother, oversaw and facilitated the prolonged torture, mutilation, and ultimate killing of Sylvia Likens. It has been the most enduring nightmare in Indianapolis true crime history. The October 26, 1965, torture murder of 16-year-old Sylvia Likens. Other crimes have involved a greater number of victims, often including children, but the villains in those stories were hardened criminals or madmen, and their acts of violence played out rapidly within a span of minutes or hours. In the aftermath of grief and anger, good people could at least comprehend the chain of events that had just unfolded. Lester and Betty Likens, who worked in a traveling carnival, asked Gertrude Baniszewski to take care of their two teenage daughters, Sylvia Marie Likens, 16, and Jenny Faye Likens, 15, in exchange for a week's compensation. However, if the money was late, Baniszewski would take out her anger on the girls. On the surface, the Likens murder is not much different from any number of heinous crimes. It was a Cinderella story without the happy ending, a teenage girl left under the care of a strict authoritarian whose idea of discipline is physical abuse that escalates until the abuse victim dies. If that was the extent of it, this case would likely have been lost to history long ago, like so many other long-forgotten murders. The abuse was carried out not just by the caregiver, the notorious Gertrude Baniszewski, but also by her own children, some as young as 10, and by other children in the neighborhood. For weeks, even months, the torture of Sylvia Likens was casual entertainment, something to do in the afternoon before dinner and favorite TV shows. At least a dozen children participated or at least watched, and none felt sufficiently disturbed to tell their own parents. Over time, Baniszewski began focusing her acts of violence on Sylvia alone. It is important to note that Baniszewski was not acting alone. She was the mother of 7 children, all of whom participated in the torment and savage attacks against Sylvia. Neighborhood children began to crowd the home to participate in the torture. The children took turns practicing their judo on Sylvia, hurling her against a wall. Some began kicking and beating her. Others extinguished their cigarettes on her skin. As Gertrude and a gang of teenagers watched, Sylvia was forced to undress in the living room and insert an empty Coke bottle into her vagina. The blood-soaked mattress of Sylvia Likens. After the beatings, Sylvia was forced into a scalding hot bath so she would be cleansed of her sins. She was severely beaten and burned for wetting her mattress while asleep, and Gertrude decided that Sylvia was no longer fit to live with her children. Near the end, Sylvia was no longer permitted to leave the house. She was thrown down the cellar stairs and locked in, given crackers for food, and refused the right to use a bathroom. Gertrude Baniszewski announced to her children that Sylvia was a prostitute, and she's proud of it, so we'll just put it on her stomach. She took a large needle and began to carve the words "I'm a prostitute and proud of it" into Sylvia's stomach. Richard Hobbs, a neighbor boy, finished the etching. When Baniszewski realized Sylvia might be dying, she forced her to write a note saying a gang of boys beat her. The plan was to blindfold her and dump her in nearby woods with the note. Sylvia tried to escape, but Gertrude and one of the boys stopped her, beating her again and throwing her back into the basement. Tragically, in October 1965, Sylvia was brutally beaten to death. In an attempt to cover up the crime, Baniszewski allegedly coerced a neighbor into calling the police and falsely reporting that Sylvia had run away. However, when the authorities arrived at their residence, Jenny Likens, Sylvia's younger sister, secretly whispered to one of the officers, pleading, "Get me out of here, and I'll reveal everything." Sylvia Likens died October 26, 1965. Cause of death was determined to be brain swelling, internal hemorrhaging of the brain and shock induced by Sylvia's extensive skin damage. Sylvia also suffered from extreme malnutrition. She was buried at Oak Hill Cemetery in Lebanon. Baniszewski received a 20-year prison sentence but was eventually released. She later relocated to Iowa, changed her name, and ultimately succumbed to lung cancer in 1990. As for the other individuals involved, most of whom were youngsters, they received lenient or no punishment. If you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.